We are so thrilled that you're joining us again for an Unmuted with Marsha. And always, we have such great guests. Today, she is not in studio with me, but she is over at the Department of State. And what a pleasure it is to welcome Tammy Bruce. She is the one behind the microphones. Then she's the chief spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State and handling strategic communications, talking not only to U.S. citizens, but she is also speaking on behalf of the State Department to our allies and our adversaries that are found around the globe. So, Tammy, I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for asking. Yeah, my life's changed a little bit, so it's fun to be on the TV with you again.
Yes, indeed. And let's talk about that change. How is it that you ended up as the spokesperson for the State Department?
Well, we can all look to President Trump, who is responsible, I think, for most of the things that are happening in our lives at this point. It's been a very exciting time. It is not something I ever expected. And I've got a call from the president one night, and he proposed it. And of course, there are certain decisions in life where you don't have to think about it, even though they're unexpected. And that was one of them. And of course, if President Trump asked you to do something, I think most of us would say yes. And that's what I did. There was really no hesitation. And it's been very exciting, very different after, over 20 years with Fox News. It's you think you've got your trajectory going in life, but I think that happens to a lot of us, right? We are doing our work. My work, of course, has been focused on media and have had the pleasure of meeting people like yourself and, of course, President Trump, and before being President Trump, Mr. Trump. And it's been wonderful. My life has changed because of the things I've talked about on the news and have written about in my books. And suddenly this is an offer that provided an avenue to hopefully continue that work directly in helping this great country of ours and the American people who make so much possible for this nation, but also for people around the world.
And we are delighted that you are doing that and that you're helping to explain some of these situations that are taking place around the globe. And if you would touch for just a minute, we get a lot of questions from people on what is happening with Russia and Ukraine, what is happening with the Middle East, and what is our path for next steps. So when that question comes to you, Tammy, what's the best way to answer that?
Well, you know, what's amazing is that with President Trump, we have gotten, in the case of Ukraine and Russia, the two parties to the table to negotiate and agree on a partial ceasefire. But even just for something that was so intractable, that the effort was really just how do you manage it in the long run? How do you pay for it in the long run? And here is Donald Trump and his administration really not just even deciding that there should be a ceasefire, but getting people to the table within weeks of becoming president after years of nothing happening. So it was really the first movement toward de-escalation that we had seen in the entire situation. And that's what you want. Every change takes the first step. Of course, we're looking for and continue and really have designed this idea that enough is enough. The recognition that this is it's carnage. It's a meat grinder, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio puts it, that neither side is making headway. And it just doesn't make any sense to continue the suffering as we wonder about people who are alive today who would not be alive tomorrow, and that we have a responsibility, a duty to try to at least change the trajectory, de-escalate to the point where we can discuss this being a permanent end and dealing with the nature of that peace can be had and that it's worth fighting for and that we can do it.
And I think indeed we can. And just getting people to the table and getting them to talk is so vitally important. And most of us want to see Russia, Ukraine resolved. And we want to see the fighting in the Middle East end. And what we have seen with people in the U.S. supporting Hamas, I noticed that Secretary Rubio had put out that the visas had been pulled from about 300 students or individuals that have student visas that are here, and they're carrying out activity against the United States. And with this anti Semitic push, I believe people are pleased to see that there is some accountability being brought to bear on that. How did you all arrive at that decision on going after those that are on visas?
Well, I think one of the reasons why President Trump was elected is because Americans watched the chaos unfold across the country after October 7th, the attack on the Israelis, that massacre that occurred, and then the shocking revelation of seeing this kind of pro-Hamas movement move through major campuses, certainly at least anti-Semitic movements moving through campuses, Jewish students being attacked, chased through the streets, the rhetoric, the repeating of the Hamas motto of "from the river to the sea," which is about the annihilation of Israel in its entirety. And it was a remarkable thing to see so much in the open. And that was one of so many things that compelled the American people to give a mandate to President Trump. And it's because they want that to stop. But you have to wonder, is the next generation of leaders, what are the universities doing? What are they teaching young people who are supposed to be the next leaders in business, in science, in diplomacy, in law, in journalism? What are they creating here? Destroying those lives in the meantime. So this process, obviously, and I've been saying in our briefings repeatedly, and it's a good reminder for the American people, that if you're a visitor to this country, we expect you to respect our laws, to behave in a decent way, to recognize that you're a visitor here, that having a visa or even a green card is not a birthright. It is a privilege. And if as an example, and the secretary uses this example, if you were to tell us when you were applying for a visa that you would be coming in to do vandalism at our universities, to disrupt learning, to take over buildings, to spew anti-Semitic rhetoric while chasing Jews down the street. If you told us those things, we would never issue you a visa. And so this has to be the consideration. At the same time, people say this is just about speech, but this is about actions. This is not about people with different ideas. This is about the nature of actions and behavior that, of course, has disrupted not just learning environments, but life in general. So this is one of the dynamics for the State Department when it comes to revoking visas. And every nation has the right to decide who comes into their country and who is allowed to stay. And especially when you're looking at criminal actions, that of course then is kind of obvious. But then it's also about the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and ICE when it comes to the nature of if people are arrested, if they're engaging in criminal conduct, versus the revocation of a visa, which makes it clear that you simply are not here legally any longer and have a period of time to leave the country. And it's a good reminder for people visiting us, but also for Americans, that our government takes our safety seriously, takes our rules seriously, that law and order matters, and that we have an interest in who's in our nation.
Well, indeed we do. And I think that's why so many of our audience were so pleased to see the designation of Tren de Aragua and MS-13 as foreign terrorist organizations, and that these criminal illegal aliens are being deported on a daily basis, and the utilization of the terrorist prison there in El Salvador.
I remember, I think your audience will, most Americans will, is that President Trump was transparent and very direct. That's his hallmark about deporting people who shouldn't be here. That should not be a scandal or controversial at all. This is something that is necessary, and we've seen, of course, the reports, the nature of the partnerships that we have with certain nations. Certainly, other nations have a duty to repatriate their citizens who have come to this country illegally or who are criminal aliens. So they have a responsibility to accept them back. And in the case of El Salvador, having a great relationship with President Bukele there, and his offer to take even third country individuals in the process of America being able to remove them. So I think that the working together, the nature of DHS and the Department of Justice and ICE, the vision of President Trump through his administration to act on the commitment to keep Americans safer, to make sure that the border is secure, and also to not just accept those who have come to this country illegally, but to remove them. And certainly the common sense framework of after designating TDA and other groups, MS-13, as foreign terrorist organizations, the reality of recognizing the terror that is implemented and our absolute right and duty to get them out of the country and to make sure that we remain safe. I think it's the diplomacy, President Trump's relationships with other leaders, Secretary Rubio's relationships with leaders have made it clear that you've got to repatriate your own citizens, and we need assistance, if you will, in making sure that this nation can keep our borders closed, that we're serious about it, but also that we are going to remove those who should not be in this country, who are these gang members, who are with terrorist organizations, the cartels, and illegal aliens, criminal illegal aliens. We're acting on that. President Trump said we would, and we are.
And everyone is so grateful that you are. When I'm doing a telephone town hall or when I'm at home in Tennessee and out and about, securing that southern border and getting criminal illegal aliens out of the country is one of the things that people mention most often. So they're thrilled to see that. Okay, before I let you go, we have many women that are in our audience, and I know people will be so curious about your career trajectory and how you got into media, what drew you to that, and then what caused you to move across the country and end up on Fox and so many other media outlets. You really are a multimedia star.
Well, it's interesting because it was, I think many of us have had this experience. It was not a plan. These certain things, I just followed my heart in a number of different ways with work. I was an activist for a period of time. And in that process, did a number of interviews. I was in Los Angeles, native Los Angelina, and found myself on talk radio because as you can tell, I'm talking and I can't shut up. So I got on talk radio, enjoyed it immensely. It was a very good, successful experience. And that's where my media experience began. And in that process, of course, then sometimes there are television interviews. And I remember when Fox first started, I think it was 1996, and they needed people to come on and talk about the issues, and I was more than happy to do that. And I was very honored when, gosh, I think it was in 2003, they asked me to become a contributor, and I did. And for me, it's always been about I've been a businesswoman, while also caring about the community and wanting to help make a difference. And it was really kind of the best and I think the smartest way to be able to communicate a message. It's never really let me down. I've always enjoyed it. And what I've really liked is the sensibility of the American people. There's so many different ways to get information, is that we do pick and choose. But what we want is not to be told what to do. We want information. We want to have options based on having as many tools in our tool chest as possible so that we know we're making the right choices for our families. America is got all kinds of different people, and the American dream is different for everybody. But the thing that keeps us free is making sure that we know what's happening. It doesn't mean we're all going to come to the same conclusion or be with the same political party. We might vote similarly sometimes or not. What we all want is a future we can count on, is being able to have children and a family that we know we can take care of and financially be able to handle. So the economy matters, crime and safety matter, whether or not we're going to be a nation that goes to war or works for peace. And that, of course, now is a hallmark of the Trump administration and of Marco Rubio's State Department, is that peace is what matters. It is what they're working for. And that means something to everyone who's got a loved one in the military is
Yes.
we want to serve our country, but we don't want our country to be reckless with our taxpayer dollars or with our lives.
You're so
And this
right
this is
about that.
this is the shift. This is the shift
Yes.
that's happened, and media allows that information to flow. And that's why I love the new job I have as the spokesperson for the
Well,
State
you
Department,
are
because it combines the two.
Yes, you are very good at it. We are delighted to have you with us and just really appreciate the way you love our country and the way you serve our country and the way you are serving our incredible Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And thank you all for joining us. We're delighted that you've chosen to spend some time with us. You'll always find me on social media at Marsha Blackburn. Thank you for being with us today.